Hello and welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express papers, Chandigarh edition. Now, in today's newspaper, the following topics are important. So, first of all, simultaneous elections, one nation, one election. So, I'm going to discuss some important facts. So, a brief analysis I have done for this. Okay. Then, the other important topic is gravitational waves. So gravitational waves has been there in the news for some time. Now today we have a small explainer on the LIGO observatory, which will come up in Hingoli, Maharashtra. So this I'll explain. In fact, I have shared a screenshot on the Telegram also. Okay. Then recently GDP data came out. So analysis of the same is coming up. So the first opinion that we have in the editorial opinion section is providing us a lot of good information like investment to GDP ratio, share of manufacturing in GDP. So all that information we are getting over here. The other theme is agri-GDP. There is another article which is focusing on the fact that agricultural GDP is not keeping pace with the GDP growth rate. Now we can build on this issue, because this is reflective of the skewed nature of national development. It is showing national economy is going up, but GDP is not, GDP is not keeping pace with it. So what are the reasons for it and what needs to be done? Previously, Prime Minister said that we will be focusing on doubling farmers' income. So where are we on that regard? What needs to be done? Okay. Today, 2nd of September, we expect the launch of Aditya L1. So again, this is also explained actually. Okay. Then in today's newspaper, international section is actually covered before the front page. So the two important topics are Black Sea grain deal. We'll cover it briefly. And there is a cyclone in the Chinese region, which is known as typhoon, known as Saola. From the economy section, we have news concerning crude imports from Russia. It's becoming unattractive, and data regarding GST collection. Further, we have a very interesting term known as the windfall tax. I think you should prepare a definition of this, right? Briefly, you should be able to explain this for a 150-word answer. Prelims, anyhow, question can be asked, but for mains, I'm telling you, you should be able to define it also. Okay, now let us first cover the international news. So this image that you see over here, this is basically an image or photograph taken by a NASA satellite known as Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. So it has identified the crater caused by the crash of Luna 25. Now what was Luna 25? It was the lander mission of Russia a day before Chandrayaan 3's Vikram. Okay, next news. Next news concerns the Black Sea grain deal. So let us first cover Black Sea grain deal and then what development has taken. Okay, so Black Sea grain deal was an arrangement by which, the Ukraine-Russia war is going on. So because of this, the trade has been affected. In fact, Russia is under sanctions. Now this Ukraine and Russian region, especially where the war is taking place, it is very good for wheat cultivation. It's like the food basket. It is the steppe region. So in interest of food security, despite the war, export of food grains was to be allowed by both Russia as well as Ukraine to the world. And this is particularly critical for countries with food security concerns like Africa, Middle East, and Asia. Fine, so these parts are affected. So last year, this Black Sea grain deal went through. The grains were exported by Russia. Russia allowed the exports to take place. But in this present year, Russia said that we are not going ahead with the Black Sea grain deal because of the sanctions and the difficult conditions imposed on Russia. However, they did make a concession for African nations. Now today what we have is Russian President Putin and Turkey's President Erdogan are to meet. They are expected to meet sometime Monday actually in a resort of Sochi. So there they are going to meet in Russia, and possibly the effort will be to restart the Black Sea grain deal. China, Hong Kong brace for Typhoon Saula. Okay, this is China, right? This is Asia, this is China, the sea. Okay, so cyclones in the tropical cyclones basically move in this direction from east to west, from sea to land. And the cyclones in this region, in the Chinese region, East Asia region particularly, they are known as typhoons. In India, we call it cyclone only, tropical cyclone. So we are seeing typhoon known as Saula. That's all. Next month, we will see cyclone. Next month onwards, we may expect cyclones on the eastern side of India, especially Andhra, Tamil Nadu. So that region, we may be expecting it next month onwards. Okay. Now you can see Nobel Prize is there in the news. Nobel body reverses invitation ban on Russia, Belarus, and Iran. So Nobel body is named after Alfred Nobel, on whom Nobel Prize is there. So Alfred Nobel had a will, that his rich properties and all the all this money that he had should be spent on promoting science, peace, etc. So Nobel Prize is allocated accordingly. So it is by the Nobel Foundation. So recently they did not invite Russia, Belarus, Iran for the obvious reasons. Russia-Ukraine war, Belarus sided with Russia. Iran also, there is some issue. So they were not invited. However, this ban has been reversed. That's all. Now you can see I I've put the Nobel Prize website. So I would like you to visit it. I would like you to study the physics prize, chemistry prize, medicine prize, because these topics can be asked. In fact, I would suggest last 5 years or last 10 years of Nobel Prize, you should know. Basics, you should know. Some of them like gravitational waves. So those things may be asked. Now we come to the front page, the actual front page. So you can see simultaneous elections. Day after government calls special session of parliament, government sets the ball rolling on one nation, one election. A panel would be formed under Kovind. Kovind was the president of India previously. Okay, so panel would be formed. And why the panel would be formed? This panel would look into the feasibility of holding simultaneous elections to Lok Sabha as well as state assembly elections. So combined elections are simultaneous elections. Now this demand for simultaneous elections is not something new. When Prime Minister Modi came into power, he did really pitch for simultaneous elections from time to time. And therefore, actually, I had the notes ready. Right, I've been preparing this for some time now. Okay. But previously, there were a lot of committees. And they had recommended that we should move towards simultaneous elections. Election Commission in 1983, this paper says 1982. So 83, 82, they recommended it. Then we had the BP Jeevan Reddy report, or 170th report of the Law Commission. So they recommended that we should have simultaneous election. The Broy Committee, so he's part of PM's Economic Advisory Council. So Bibek Debroy Committee looked into the issue of simultaneous elections, the feasibility. Then there was Balbir Chauhan Committee, or the 21st Law Commission. So all of them have recommended that we should have simultaneous elections. Right. So same time elections should take place for Lok Sabha as well as state elections. The reason being, The reason being that the conduct of elections cost money to the exchequer. So thousands of crores are spent on elections. So why not have a single elections across the country? Next, security arrangements have to be made. In fact, almost every year we have an election, so every time security arrangement has to be made. So why not have it a one-time arrangement? Then, when elections are to take place, just before that, the Election Commission brings in the Model Code of Conduct. It's basically a provision which is for the ruling party in power, that they do not use their authority, their power, to announce schemes, etc., which will unfavorable, it will favor them. So misuse does not take place. And besides, obviously, the conduct of people contesting the elections, that is also there. But the main objective is that the party in power does not misuse its authority so that they are advantaged. Now, with the Model Code of Conduct, there is a restriction on the government to announce developmental schemes, to take up initiatives. I have negatives of all these points also, the counters also ready. Okay. Now, every time when elections take place, there is issue of black money, there is rise of communal tensions, communal flare-up takes place, right? You can understand how it is going on. Okay. Now, communal includes caste, it includes regional politics, regionalism, it includes communalism on the grounds of religion. So it puts the society on the boil negatively. Now, what are the concerns? Some of the concerns are actually mentioned in this article. That is the legal or the constitutional challenges. So some changes have to be made to the constitution, to the laws, to have simultaneous elections. So first one, we have articles 83 and 172. So they say that constitution fixes a term of 5 years and no longer for the Lok Sabha as well as assemblies respectively. So 83 is for the Lok Sabha and 172 is for the state assemblies. Likewise, we have State Representation of People's Act 1951, which provides for the process of conduct of elections. So section 14 and 15 of the Representation of People's Act has to be amended. Act 1951. So there are two, 1950 and 1951. So 1951 has to be changed. So that is there. Okay, so changes to the constitution has to be made. Now, when you make a change to the constitution, so it's governed by Article 368, right? If you're making a change to the constitution, and when you make a change to the constitution, 2/3 majority, 2/3 plus simple majority at Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha respectively is required. Now, since this involves a federal character, so half of the state legislatures should pass a resolution approving the amendment. So that is, and this resolution would be by simple majority. So this has to be done. I don't know how they will do it if it is in this cycle, but this problem is there. Besides this, right, so we are done with the legal challenges. Next is no confidence motion. What if Lok Sabha does not enjoy a majority, the opposition, certain members move out, defection takes place. So what happens in that regard? Or the government is not able to claim majority. So Lok Sabha collapses. Now, do we wait for a cycle of 5 years because Lok Sabha is gone, but state assemblies are still functioning? Or what if there is, in a particular state, there is no majority? What happens in that scenario? So those questions are still unanswered. Actually, the Broglie committee had said that in that case, those who are putting forth for the no confidence motion, they have to provide an alternative for forming the government at the same time. Okay. Here, these articles that are mentioned, you can add to this Article 356, that is President's Rule provisions when there is a constitutional breakdown. So what happens in that regard? Then what if there is a vacancy of seat? For some reason, there is a vacancy that emerges. Now, what would be the procedure? We normally have bipolar elections, that is not an issue, but this point can be considered. Right, so these are the issues. Besides, there is one more point that has been expressed is that if we have simultaneous elections, we are going to need in one go lot of security and elect EVM machines, and this will cost us lot of money, because presently what is happening is we have elections round the clock, every year almost we have an election. So machines keep getting distributed. We do not need the machines and security apparatus in one go. They're distributed, they're scattered. But in this case, everything will be required in one go. This may actually push up the cost. And at the present moment, the Election Commission is saying that if we have simultaneous election in this particular cycle, then in that case, we do not have adequate EVM machines. It will take them time. Okay. Now I'd like to tell you one more thing with reference to this. We do talk about simultaneous elections, but what is actually the proposal is, what the Broy committee had recommended, that we'll have Lok Sabha election fine, and half of the state elections, state assemblies, will have the elections. Then 2.5 years later, that is half of the 5 years, other states will have elections. So constantly, in a gap of 2.5 years, elections will take place. So it's not truly simultaneous elections. So this provision was provided for by the De Broglie committee. Okay. Next is India bloc. I think this is really not important from exam point of view, but this is something very important speaking from politics point of view as to what is happening. So India bloc is reflective of an anti-BJP front, and they have, there is a possibility that the elections may be hastened. Elections may take place earlier. So India bloc has hastened their move and their negotiations with the different political parties, and they have announced formation of 5 committees. So one is a 14-member committee which will be responsible for election coordination and strategy, one for campaigns, other for social media, then overall media and research. So these committees would be there. So that is one thing from the news. Second is, they're saying that seat sharing arrangement shall take place, seat sharing arrangements between the different opposition parties in such a way that the one is, obviously when elections are taking place, there will be a BJP candidate and the opposition will have a single BJP, single non-BJP or single opposition member. That is the idea, so that the vote does not split amongst different candidates. Like for example, Congress, Samajwadi Party, which is Bahujan Samajwadi Party. So the vote does not split. So that is what they're saying. They will try it as far as possible. So that is what they're saying. At the same time, they're saying all the members, they concur that they will have to follow a sense of accommodative spirit. Now we just scroll. This topic, this is about the dissolution of the panchayats in Punjab, which took place recently. So yesterday we talked about the issues with the local bodies, panchayati raj institutions. Now here what I want to bring my attention to is the friction between the political bosses and the bureaucracy. So that is the main theme that I'm going to focus. And this is from GS2 governance point of view. Now, when this dissolution of panchayats took place, obviously, there's a senior IAS officers must have prepared some report. sent it to the political brass and got it approved, or maybe political brass gave them directives to the bureaucracy, and on that basis, the dissolution of panchayats took place. Now, when the dissolution took place, this was not liked, then this was reversed. Now, the political brass, although it has come to light that they were in no, the CM, etc., they knew about this decision, but they have pinned the blame on the two senior IAS officers, that these people are responsible because they did not seek a written legal opinion. Finished. Right? This is what has happened now. Okay. Now, because of this, what will happen is that there will be friction between the bureaucracy and the political bosses. There will be lack of trust. There will be lack of sense of commitment. Right? So these things are not good because political bosses are there, but end of the day, it's the bureaucracy which runs the government. They are the ones who have the knowledge and the expertise. So when there is lack of support, the government may keep bringing up schemes, but if the bureaucracy does not support, or if we do not have a committed bureaucracy in the correct sense, then the governance will be compromised. The interests of the citizens are undermined. So this is the problem over here. So this should have been dealt tactfully. So governance compromised, lack of cooperation amongst from the bureaucracy, and a sense of mistrust. So these things are not good. And this is not the only place this is happening. Even with reference to the patwaris at the lower levels of subordinate bureaucracy, even there this problem is taking place. Next, this news may be more relevant from point of view. So we are basically covering midday meal scheme for Punjab, which is known as Bal Vatika project. Fine, midday meal scheme. So you see, midday meal scheme is something universal across the country, and midday meal scheme is within the school you get food. So according to the and the midday meal scheme comes under a bigger scheme, a bigger umbrella scheme known as PM Poshan. So I want to discuss the PM Poshan. Right. So PM Poshan is basically under Ministry of Women and Child Development, but it needs coordination and support of 18 other ministries. For example, midday meal scheme would actually be also coming under Ministry of Education. Okay. Now the PM Poshan, it's focusing on improvement status of children from 0 to 6 years. So 0 to 6 years, that is the main focus. And so if I say 0 to 6 years, it means that we're talking about midday meal scheme at primary level. We are also talking about integrated child development scheme. And ICDS is implemented in Anganwadis. So those also come under the PM Poshan Abhiyan. Sorry. Okay, so this is the focus. Then adolescent girls, pregnant women, lactating mothers. So they are also there. Now, naturally, if woman gives birth, if her health is compromised, the health of the child will also be compromised. And the main objectives are mentioned over here, because if right nutritional intervention is given, then in that case, it will help reduce stunting. Stunting means reduced height. It will help reduce the issue of underweight prevalence. It also means wasting, stunting, and wasting. Wasting means being very thin. Then reduced prevalence of anemia. So it will address anemia at the level of child as well as at the level of adolescent women, adolescent girls, and pregnant women, and reduce low birth weight. Right. So these are the main objectives. So you see mention of ICDS is also given over here. So this is the PM Poshan Abhiyan. Now this PM Poshan Abhiyan is a centrally sponsored scheme. You see, it is announced by the government. It's being implemented by the state under a different name. Now 60% of the funding, here it is mentioned, 60% of the funding is coming from the center, 40% is from the state. So therefore we call it as a centrally sponsored scheme because the states are also implementing it. Another classification of schemes is central sector scheme, where 100% of the contribution comes from the center or the union government. So this is it. By the way, if you want to know about ICDS, we have a video on the same. So ICDS, Google ICDS IASPrimers, you will get it. Now we come to the explained section. So you can see Aditya L1. There is one on special session of parliament. I'm not very keen on covering it. Then 3 million EVMs, massive security and funds would be required for holding simultaneous elections. So this may not be feasible if immediately they say that simultaneous polls have to be done, right? So I think this is sufficient. This is sufficient to explain. Now let us cover this Aditya L1. We have been covering it for some time now. So what Aditya L1 is doing is, it will launch in, it should be launching today. It will have a journey of nearly 100 days. It will travel up to 1.5 million kilometers to distance L1, right? So this is the sun and there are several Lagrange's point. So it will come to Lagrange 1, this point over here. Now what are these Lagrange points? So Lagrange point is basically that point near the sun. This is the sun. So L1, L2, L3, L4, L5. So if there is any object over here, it will tend to remain in the same position. So it will be good for observation related activity. Now Aditya L1 is obviously a space observatory and it has optical sensors. It will be observing it. Right, so L1 is one of the points and it will remain. The reason that is mentioned is that the force of gravity is countered by the centripetal force. Right, so that is the reason that is given in NASA website, Wikipedia, you name it. So that's it. Now what will it be observing? It will be observing the sun, of course. It will observe the photosphere, chromosphere. It will observe the solar flares that are coming up, the coronal mass ejection, and how they impact the space, how it will impact the space weather. So these are the things. And eventually, how would it affect the Earth in the long run? So now with this, we have an opportunity to have with greater clarity, observe all these phenomena. And all of this does have an impact on the Earth. Now the payloads have been mentioned. You know what, I'll give you the payloads from Aditya Chandrayaan website or Aditya L1 if they have a website. I'll share the PDF with you on the Telegram. So later I will do it. Now one payload that was mentioned was SUITS. It will be observing the sun in ultraviolet spectrum. Now we are on to the editorial page, editorial opinion page. So first article that you see, this is on simultaneous elections. So mainly it's saying, it's again very critical of the government. I didn't even bother reading it actually. So it's basically saying that we should not be so secretive. We should not have stealth. This is a matter of national importance. We should have a lot more discussions and everything should take place in full public glare. Okay. Next, we have on GDP. So this one, basic focus should be on getting all these facts on GDP related. Next, we have agriculture and agri-GDP and normal GDP. So let's cover this quickly. So real GDP growth, I keep saying it, real GDP growth was at 7.8%. Real GDP means GDP which accounts for inflation. Because of price rise, the value of product, goods and services produced within the country, their value increases because of increase in price. So, but that is not an indicative of increase in production. So the idea of real GDP is that we offset the impact of price or inflation. So 7.8%. But when we see this, bulk, mainly it is being propelled by service sector growth, so which was at 10.5% we did yesterday. The problem is that manufacturing sector has not been growing at the same pace, 5.5, 5.3%. So this is lower than the national GDP. So this is obviously a matter of concern as to why is this low, and especially when the commodity prices have been lower. So the cost of inputs were lower. So then also manufacturing sector has not done well. In fact, yesterday in the economy section, we saw that core sector, even that did well, but why? What is the issue with manufacturing then? Besides this, a very important fact, which you can use in your answer writing, investment to GDP ratio is at 34.7%. Sometimes this is also known as capital formation. So 34.7%. It's on the higher side. Normally we are at 28%. 28 to 30%, but it is at 34.7%. Why is this important? Because investments normally go, imagine somebody wants to open a factory. So you make an investment in opening a factory or buying in new machines. So they help us in increasing production and productivity. So in the long run, it helps propel the GDP, productivity, production in the economy. So these are good because they will give returns in times to come. Now here again, the problem is that investment to GDP is mainly propelled by the government spending on, higher capex from the government, capital expenditure from the government. Now this is not sustainable. Government cannot keep doing this. This has to come from private players. Thankfully, for private players, their balance sheets have cleaned. Previously, private players, they were having a lot of NPAs. So that burden has come out. We should now push private sector to invest, make more investments. But now again, for private sector to raise more investments, they will need to borrow money, but the cost of capital remains high because of the issues of inflation, etc. The interest rates have been hiked. So that is actually an issue. Okay. Besides, now one advantage is that because of the role of China, geopolitically speaking, one opportunity for India is that Western companies are looking at, initially they were mainly focused on China for the global supply chain, but they're now looking at some other country as well. This is known as China plus one strategy, that we cannot move out of China. We have some factories, companies set up in China. We cannot move out of it, but we can hedge, we can reduce our risk by moving to another country as well. So China plus one. So India may be that country which is alternative to China. Okay. Right. So you're getting some important pointers. May not be this one, not very well structured, but still. Okay. Moving on. So these are the benefits. Moving on. There is a concern with the prolonged geopolitical tensions like Ukraine-Russia war. There is a slowdown in the West. Plus, we have news of inflation, etc. So we see interest rates have been hiked. The demand, global economy is not as robust, and this has affected the exports growing from India to the West. right? So there are headwinds or resistance coming from West because of their economy not doing well. Exports from India may not get affected. It will eventually affect the Indian economy. And interestingly, more than the West, the Asia Pacific region is even more badly affected. Moving on, next article, a field check. Agriculture acted as a shock absorber during COVID. Now it is threatening to be a drag on the economy. Now, main theme over here that I want to focus is average GDP is lower. Right? In fact, some of the things from the article itself, I do not agree. So we say that the real GDP of the country is at 7.8% real GDP. The economy is growing at 7.8%, while average GDP is at 3.5 to 4% in the last two fiscals. What I don't agree with this article is it says the farm sector posted a respectable growth. There is nothing unusual about this. We have been reading this from quite some time. So, and this is far lower. It's not even half of the national growth. So imagine the economy is growing at this rate while agriculture is at this rate. So obviously the farmers, the rural households are moving backwards in a way. They are being left behind. Things are going to be expensive. Prices are going to rise. Their incomes are not increasing. They are going to be impoverished in times to come. That is what it is indicating. So it's not respectable in any means. Okay. Now, agri GDP is going to become worst as we expect because of the monsoons. Too much of rains in the northern part, northwestern part, El Nino year, drought-prone region affected badly during, especially in this year, and maybe the next year also. It is so much, it's so bad that we expect, we know the food prices have gone up. The country is concerned about availability of food security. Therefore, there are export curbs and stocking limits. It's well expected. It is expected that food inflation will further increase. Probably that is one reason why elections, they are saying that elections will be preponed because nobody would be really able to manage the inflation issue. Okay. So agri GDP is going to get affected even more, and which is not good. That is what the article is saying. Now, here the theme that I identify is this. And this should be your main focus, right? And this should be prepared. Now, what is the reason for the agriculture not keeping up with the national growth rate? So, irrigation, infrastructure is not there. Farmers are prone to disasters. In fact, we can also say that there are small and marginal farmers who are in a deplorable state. So, and they are even more vulnerable to disasters. Farm insurance is not very effective. So that is an issue. Then we have issues like price controls, export controls, etc. So price controls are imposed so that inflation is contained. But the problem is that farmers produce. So if the prices go up, farmers should ideally get more income. So their interest is compromised. Then poor marketing infrastructure, like issues with the mandis, warehousing, logistics, cold storage. So those are issues. So this affects the people. And we can always talk about the need for bringing in laws to reform the farm sector. And overall, all of this affects the well-being of the farmers. You see, the land holding is actually decreasing. It was somewhere at 0.8% last decade. It has come to 0.558 hectare average land holding. The rural household is now not so much of a farmer, but actually a wage earner, rural wage earner. He's working on the fields of some other person. Fragmented land land holding. So those are again concerns which further affects the income of the farmers. Okay. Moving on, within the G20, there is one of the themes which is road safety. Missing in G20, road safety. So road safety has been focused upon by a member of the National Road Safety Council. So I want you to do it. Previously, really sorry. Okay. So this previously I've covered this, and this is an important topic we should cover. Now, talking about road safety, UN Sustainable Development Goal. So one of the targets says that we need to focus reducing the death toll on roads by half by 2030. Now, some facts. Roughly about 4.5 lakh deaths take place every year because of accidents, and most of them, 70% of these people who die are the youth, and they are economically productive sections of the population, so which is not good for the country. Okay. Now, if we have to reduce the accidents and improve road safety, the following needs to be done. So there are these 4 E's of road safety. So one is education, creating awareness, sensitization towards road safety, making engineering changes. For example, vehicle engineering, we can say, NCAP safety ratings and all those, road design, so that can be improved. Identifying accident prone areas and taking remedial road design changes, addressing the issue of black spots. So those can maybe taken up. Then enforcement, you have enforcement so that these necessary changes are done, and emergency changes. Okay. We can also add one more, that is regulatory. So for that we have the Motor Vehicles Act. Maybe in enforcement you can add regulatory. So again, Aditya L1 has been explained. Now we come to gravitational waves. So this is the site Hingoli of Maharashtra, where the LIGO observatory will come. Okay. So same thing is explained over here also in the image form. So this LIGO observatory, the aim is to observe gravitational waves. So first of all, what is gravitational waves? So doing it in very brief, gravitational waves are ripples created in the space-time fabric due to the action of gravity or the mass of the object. So Einstein proposed that you may imagine a water, or you may imagine a foam, or I would say a bed sheet, take it and put a ball in it. Put another ball, lighter ball. So it will tend to be attracted to the heavier ball. So this is an example of, the smaller ball being attracted to the bigger ball. This is an example of the action of gravity, as proposed by Einstein also in his general theory of relativity. And this sheet that we are referring to, it is the space-time fabric. Space visualized in 4 dimensions: length, width, height, and time. So that was his proposed. So when you put any mass onto the space-time fabric, ripples are created and they interact with the other body. So that's what ripples created in the space-time fabric due to the action of gravity caused by the masses of the objects in it. A very simple definition. Okay. Now how will LIGO observatory observe? So LIGO observatory will be something like this X shaped. So it will have these, it's very difficult to observe gravitational waves. They're very, very weak forces, gravitational force. Okay. So there'll be these 2 arms. So there'll be 2 arms of 4 kilometers each. From here to here, 4 kilometers. From here to here, 4 kilometers. Right. The arrangement is that a light would be thrown, and it will be split into two parts, such that the light is, there'll be a beam splitter which will split the light into two parts. This is the beam splitter. So into two parts. And there are highly reflective mirrors. So in the normal situation, when the light passes, it will take same amount of time for it to get reflected from this mirror and coming back and detected on the light detector. So same amount of time. In the event of a gravitational wave, if that happens, then in that case, one arm may get elongated while the other may get shortened. So based on that, we will be able to observe the gravitational waves. It will be recorded. I really don't understand the phenomena of its extension and contraction. So I don't understand, but that's how this thing will be working. Now, why study gravitational waves? See, gravitational waves, we do not know a lot about the space-time fabric. There are a lot of dark areas, dark energy, dark matter in the space. So gravitational waves affect that, because the non-dark thing we can observe, we can see, but the dark matter we cannot see. So gravitational waves interact with the dark matter also, and that will provide us the information in the purest form. That is why study of gravitational waves is important. A lot of unseen things of the universe, unanswered questions may be addressed by this. There are 4 other facilities of LIGO. So this is in US, right? You can read this. I want you to prepare a mains-based question on the working of the LIGO observatory, because previously IR NSS was asked. So you should be able to describe it in your own words, that's all. And please draw this also. It's not very difficult to do it. Right? Why we should study this is very brief. You can get it from any UPSC website. Right? So that's not an issue. Content nowadays is not an issue. I was just interested to see which movies can be watched. Right? So I was All Smoke and Little Fire, this one. So this is based on a woman Prime Minister of Israel, who was the Prime Minister during the Yom Kippur War. So this thing is there in the news. So we should know about the Yom Kippur War. So this took place in 1973, and this was the Arab alliance against the Israel, or the 4th Arab-Israel War. So this was also known as the October War, which was in 1973. It's based on her. Coming to the economy section. Okay, I just want to show the oil rate is 87.65, USD rate is 82.71. That's all. So, and the reason is India's Russian oil imports slump in August as Urals lose some sheen. Okay. Traditionally, we really don't buy oil from Russia. Right? Oil means petroleum, diesel. Crude is refined, and then we get petroleum, diesel, kerosene, etc. Traditionally, we do not buy from Russia because Russia is very far away. But because of this Russia-Ukraine war, and because of the sanctions on Russia, Russia said, "See, India, you are a friend. We will give you deep discounts on fuel. You need fuel, right? So we will give you deep discounts." So we started buying from Russia. In fact, Russia became the biggest supplier of oil to India. But in times to come, this is obviously big discounts means it's not good for Russian economy. The Russian oil prices have started to increase. So at present, it is around $67 per barrel, and the price difference is not much within the other oil provided by other countries. So overall, our dependence on Russia is again getting down 20% per month. So over 20% month on month in August. So that decline is there. So, so, so yes, so this is the main issue. Now here there is a reference of a term known as windfall tax cut. Government cuts windfall tax on domestic crude, hikes levy on export of diesel, etc. ATF, by the way, is aviation turbine fuel, so for planes basically, a high purity fuel. Okay, so let me explain windfall tax. Now imagine there is a refiner, Bharat Petroleum, etc., and one that markets also sells the oil to the consumer. Now, because of the subsidies and the discounts that were given by Russia, so these refiners were getting crude at a cheaper rate. They were getting at a cheaper rate. So, and the government said that, has fixed the price. So they were able to make more profits because the selling price is fixed. The price is fixed and they're getting at a cheaper price. So more scope for profit because of the decline in crude prices. So these refiners are getting more profit. So to absorb that profit, the government, and to keep the price steady, government doesn't want the price to fall. So they are putting a tax to absorb the excess profit that is coming. So that is known as windfall tax. So windfall is too much money, too much things coming, benefits coming to these refiners. So these are being taken away by the government by windfall tax. So that's it. This is the arrangement. Now these are being reduced. Windfall tax is being reduced because the crude prices are going up. So the profitability of the refiners is becoming less. Moody's raises growth forecast for 2023 to 6.7%. Fine. Now let's focus here. Auto sales at all-time monthly high, very good. But two-wheeler sales crawl. Now what does this indicate? Who buys two-wheelers? The middle class, mainly the middle class, the rural population. So small, So it's reflective of the health of the economy at the same time. August GST mop up at 1.59 lakh crore. So this is a good sign. The government is getting good money. Previously it was at less than 1 lakh per month. Now it is at 1.59 lakh per month. Okay, so now we have the sports news, Asia Cup, etc. US Open is going on. You know what? You need to know the tennis. You really don't have to follow the tennis news.